Okay guys, I'm checking out the three new vintage EQs in the new Logic 10.4. One thing to note is if you go to the plugin slot and you go into the EQ section, all of these EQs are in a new subfolder called the Vintage EQ Collection. So hopefully that suggests Apple will bring us more of these vintage EQ emulations. That's to be seen. But anyway, there's the three EQs. Okay, this is essentially, although it's got this extra section, this is an emulation of a classic old Pultec EQP-1A. This is an emulation of a Neve 1073, and this is an emulation of an old API 650 graphic. Right now, the Pultec and the Neve, they're both switching EQs. Alright, but Apple gives us a slightly different take on it. Like on the Neve one here, here's your low cut, and these are the switching selectable frequencies: 50 Hz, 80 Hz, 160 or 300. You click on them to do the switching. Right? However, the control is free to select any frequency between 50 Hz and 300. Right? So you kind of get that as a little extra. Not sure if I would call it an extra, actually, because the whole point of a switching EQ is to work with the switching frequencies, but you can do that. But you do get this ability to choose other frequencies, and that's the same for all the bands. Right? So on the low shelf here, you can switch between the traditional frequencies: 35, 60, 110 or 220, but you're free to sweep any frequencies in between those. Right? And the same with the mid here. You can switch by clicking on the numbers: 360 Hz, 700 Hz, 1.6K, 3.2, 4.8, 7.2. But again, you're free to sweep any of those frequencies. Right. So yeah, you've got a low cut, a low shelf, a single mid, and a fixed 12K high shelf. But they do boost more than the original units. I think that was set to 6. I'll have to come back to this because I'm going to do a comparison with the T-Rex one. That's the 1073. Great EQ. Okay, this is the Pultec, which is a bit of an odd one. You've got a low frequency select here. Again, you can switch between the traditional frequencies or sweep. Okay, and the way this works is you choose your low frequency and you boost with the boost control or cut with the cut control. But it does a trick where if you boost and cut at the same time, it gives you a more focused bottom end at the frequency you've selected. Then these three controls are for a single peak, mid or an upper frequency band. Okay, now Apple gives us extra frequencies here. 6K is in there, 14K is in there, 1K is in there. There's some extra frequencies that weren't on the original Pultec. Again, you switch by clicking on the numbers, but you're free to sweep. Right? So you choose the frequency, narrow bandwidth or wide bandwidth, and just boost it. That's all it can do. It can't cut, it can only boost. Then these two controls are the high attenuation. You choose a frequency, 20, 10 or 5K, but again, that's sweepable with this Apple one, right? And you turn that down with a kind of upper shelf. And all it does is turn down. The more you raise this, the more you're turning down that high shelf at whatever the fixed frequency is, right? And then we've got this additional bit here. We'll come back to that. And then here we've got the 650 graphic. It's a straight octave graphic. Right? So these are all octaves. Yeah, they double up. So there's the center frequency, 1K, half it 500 Hz an octave down, half it 250 Hz an octave down, half it 125, half it 63, half it 31. Going the other way, double it 2K, 4K, 8K, 16K. Very, very useful little unit to have this actually. Don't ever underestimate the effectiveness of a simple 10 band graphic like that. They're really, really useful. and they can help beginners learn a lot about frequencies as well. Okay, so that's the 3 in the collection. Just briefly looking at them. I'm going to just give you some comparisons now. Let's start with this drum beat. I've got a compressor on it, right? And on here I've got the Apple Logic Pultec, and I've got the T-Rex Pultec emulation. Now let me just check they're both set to exactly the same. Right, so we've got a low frequency of 30 Hertz with 8 dB of boost and 9 dB of cut, right? So 30 Hertz on the low, 8 dB of boost, 9 dB of cut. And then on the high frequency one here, they're both set to 8K to give some high-end glisten on this. They're both on this stereo kit. 8K, full bandwidth, and 8 dB of boost, and no upper end attenuation on either is being used, right? And I'm not using this section at all. We're just using this to compare how well the Apple emulation does the low end trick, where you boost and cut the low end frequency at the same time, which gives you a really nice big kick drum. So let's check this out. Okay, so here's the drum beat, and by the way, I'm comparing it to this T-Rex one, and these are very well respected emulations. All right, so let's start with the Logic one. Here we go. And you can hear when I bring it in, this 30 Hertz boost and cut at the same time is focusing a really deep 30 Hertz bottom end on the kick, focused around 30 Hertz, right? And the 8K is giving it 8 dB of boost at this 8K top end, is giving it some glisten up at the top. Now let's switch to the T-Rex one. I can't hear any difference. Back to this one. Maybe this has got maybe just a little more lower mid, a smidge. Perhaps it's not quite carving out with the attenuation here quite as much as the T-Rex one, but my god, if it's there, it's subtle. Yeah, there is. Oh, it's really subtle, but perhaps the T-Rex one is a smidge warmer, maybe. But this is near as damn it, I mean, to this one. And they're both emulations in the first place, so. And I doubt any two original EQP-1As, if you can find them, are absolutely identical either. But there you go. They're as near as damn it absolutely identical. Okay, now let's look at, I've got two guitars here, right? Two guitars. This is the Logic emulation of the 1073. They're both guitar tracks have got the same bit of guitar on, right? And this is the T-Rex one. I'll just check I haven't changed the frequencies, and they're both the same. They're both doing a 50 Hertz low cut, 50 Hertz low cut, 50 Hertz low cut. They're both doing, oh, that should be 110. 110 with 9 dB of boost for the low shelf. Then the single peak band they're both set to 700 Hertz doing 5 dB of boost, and the fixed 12K shelf, they're both giving 6 dB of boost on that. Right? Right, they're exactly the same. So, let's have a listen. This is the Logic one. Right, and this is the T-Rex one. Let's switch between them, starting with the Logic one, and I'll just switch by alternately soloing like that, and I'm telling you, there's nothing in it. Accidentally switch the drums on. Let's mute those to make sure that doesn't happen again. Yeah, I mean, can you hear any difference switching between them? Perhaps the T-Rex one is slightly lower in level. Let's raise its output 1. Just, I hear no difference at all, really. Very good, very good. Okay, and then another bit of guitar here, and on this we've got the, on this first track here, this one, we've got the Apple emulation of the Pultec, and on this track we've got the T-Rex emulation of the Pultec. Now they're both, let's set them the same, 60 Hertz with 7 dB of boost and 8 dB of cut. 7 dB of boost, 8 dB of cut. Full bandwidth at 5K, and they're both giving 8 dB of boost at 5K. No attenuation, no attenuation. And again, we're not using this section, we're just comparing the raw Pultec bit here, right? Okay, so let's check those out. Again, I'll switch between with the soloing. Let's turn these off so they don't accidentally trigger. Right, here we go. Let's shorten this cycle range. Do you hear anything? Do you hear any difference? Let's have that little strum there where it gets quite fine and trebly. That little bit. Let's compare them over that. Don't hear any difference at all. Fantastic stuff. Absolutely brilliant. So yeah, I mean, you know, those T-Rex emulations are very, very well respected, and these Apple ones seem to be, near as damn it, exactly the same. Now just let's look at something else. I'll come back to the Pultec emulation and the Neve emulation on the Apple ones, but I just want to show you the graphic now. Now, don't underestimate a simple 10-band graphic, octave graphic like this. They're incredibly useful. If you watched me mixing that Daisy Daisy track, I used one of these 10-band graphics. It was the again, the T-Rax emulation of this classic API, and what I did was I had the bass split across 2 tracks. One I put warm deep bottom end on it, and the other one I put it through a guitar amp with lots of distortion, and then I took out all the low end and all the high end and just left the real grinding distorted mid-range, and then blended that in with the warm bass on the other track, and it made a really nice grinding, almost Stranglers like bass thing, right? These can be incredibly useful little graphics like this, and they're really good to teach beginners about frequencies, right? I've done this before in my EQ tutorials, but I'm just going to show you again very quickly. These are just 10 bands an octave apart. So if you start with 1K, and by the way, it's this proportional Q on these APIs, so the more you boost, the more you cut, the tighter the bandwidth gets. But you can use this to learn about frequencies, right? It's on this drum kit here, right? And that is 1K. We're just listening to the 1K frequency area, and it's fully boosted, so it's quite tight. It's tightened that up to quite a tight bandwidth around 1K, and you hear that yogurt pot tone, that yogurt pot sound. Well, that's what I call it, the yogurt pot tone. It's the best way to remember what 1K, the 1K frequency area sounds like. It sounds like somebody tapping on a small plastic yogurt pot, you know, rock like that. If you then go down an octave to 500 Hertz, you get a big yogurt pot, like a big plastic pot, just transition, or a small, very small cardboard box tone, like oh. Go down an octave to 250 and you get a big cardboard box. Like, you know, like as if you're listening inside a cardboard box. And then down to 125, where you're just transitioning into bass territory. This is like a really big cardboard box. And that, down from that, you're into real deep bass territory. And you don't get any more box tone. And 63 is ultra sub bass, right? Just air. But you go up from 1K, remember it's the yogurt pot, to 2K, an octave up, and this is the 2K is the transition between yogurt pot and metallic treble. Everything above is metallic treble. Everything below is getting bigger and bigger pot sound, right? This is right. It's got a metallic distortion, this kind of edge to it, and a little tiny bit of very small plastic pot, like tack 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 tone, right? But up from there, you don't get any more pot sound. At 4K, an octave above, you're into just that kind of treble fizz then, right? A metallic trebly sound. And up an octave from there, 8K, you're into real enhancer territory. Just the finest kind of upper end fizz. You don't really perceive a pitch to it. The 16K, well, there'll be no drum content in 16K here, so you won't hear anything on that. So these are really good to learn about frequencies. I'll just Alt left click to reset these. Right, really good for that. You beginners, get hold of this, put it across some different material, different Apple loops, different drum beats. Move, you know, put all the sliders down, move up sliders, and start to learn what the frequency areas sound like. It's going to really help you more than anything else to learn about EQ, right? But in its own right, a little graphic like this is a fantastic addition to have. So full marks to Apple for giving us that. Now, while we're here, this unit, like all the other vintage EQs that Apple have given us with this 10.4 update, they've all got this drive control, but they never seem to do much. Yeah, I mean, the amount of drive you're getting is very subtle. Doesn't do a huge amount. Not on that one, or on any of the others. On this one again, we've got a tube EQ, on this tube EQ, as they call it, we've got a drive control. It's subtle. It's subtle. Perhaps I would say Apple could give us more drive. Okay, it's nice. It's a nice saturation, right? But and it's different for each of them. But it's very subtle. Perhaps we could have a little bit more. And it's the same on the 1073 emulation. Have a listen to it on here. Let's just have that out a bit more. Come on! Yeah, it's very subtle indeed. It's a nice drive emulation, but it's just, can we have a bit more, please, Apple? That would be nice. Right? Okay. Yeah. So let's start by looking at that Pultec emulation a bit more here. This is what they call the tube EQ. Now, again, if you don't understand how this works, watch the video I did of the T-Rex emulation of the Pultec. It's exactly the same for this section, which is the emulation of the old Pultec. You choose a switching EQ frequency, boost and cut. You can boost with the boost control, that frequency, or cut with the cut control, or attenuate control, the chosen frequency. But it does this quirk, the Pultec, where if you boost and cut at the same time, it sort of gives you the shelf boosting up at the bottom end, then it sort of carves out above, attenuating at the same time boosting, does a carve out of the frequencies above the frequency you're boosting to focus on that frequency even more, which is why it's really good for that low end kick drum trick and things like that. So with this EQ, you choose the bottom frequency here and boost it or cut it or do both to focus the frequency that you're boosting. But like with all of these vintage EQs that Apple have given us, you can sweep between the frequencies, right? These three controls are the fixed high band. Choose a frequency. Again, we get additional frequencies from Apple. Click to switch between them, or you can sweep continuously. This is narrow bandwidth, wide bandwidth, and you just boost. There's no cut. And then you have a high attenuate up here. 20k, 10k, or 5k. Turn this up, you are sort of turning down a shelf at the selected frequency. Like a high shelf, you're turning down. The more you turn that up, the more you're turning the high shelf down. But at really extreme amounts of attenuation, if you're attenuating at 10k, obviously that shelf turning down is going to work back into frequencies lower down than 10k, right? So all this does is attenuate the selected frequency here. It's switchable, but you can sweep between them, right? But they've given us this extra section here, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this peak band down so it's not doing anything. And we can bring in this extra section. Now don't quote me, but this may be taken from the Pultec. Pultec do an emulation of the Pultec and they add this extra mid section, let's call it. So what you've got here is at the bottom, these two controls are a peak boost for the selected frequency. And these are lower mid frequencies. 200 Hz, 300 Hz, 500 Hz, 700 Hz, 1K. Choose the frequency and boost. All you can do is boost, right? And I've got to say that is a really sweet 1K. That is gorgeous. Let's try 700. is lovely. That is so lovely. It doesn't give, I mean, it goes to 10, but it doesn't give colossal amounts of boost. But it's beautiful and rich. These two mid frequencies here, 700 Hz and 1K. That is gorgeous. Oh, listen to how sweet that is. Oh, that is sensational, and it's so warm and, well, tube-like. Let's try the 1K again. 1K, as you heard on the graphic, is normally quite honky. Well, I was giving it colossal amounts of boost on that graphic, but this is very rich. That is fantastic. 500 Hz. That sort of rich, mid-sized boxiness. Like that, but it's again lovely and warm. It's beautiful. That is absolutely fantastic. That is one of the nicest sounds I've ever heard for those three frequencies. It's normally, if you give these a bit of welly, 500, 700 and 1K, they can sound a bit artificial, but this is just, just a little bit of that 500 box. You can hear it like that. Oh, that is lovely. 300. Lovely, warm, large cardboard box tone. Beautiful and warm. 200 Hz. Oh, that is sensational. So you select the lower mid frequency and boost. All you can do is boost, but again, you can sweep. You don't have to click and do the switching, although I would advise you, particularly beginners, stick with the switch frequencies. You know, don't try to get clever with these in-between frequencies. You know, it's probably a good idea if you're new to this game, right? So you choose your lower mid frequency, let's call it, from 200 up to 1K, and you boost the amount of that. I can't tell you what the bandwidth is. It sounds not too wide, but it's certainly not tight. Okay, and then at the other end here, you've got the same thing, but for the higher treble frequency. The higher, well, it's, you know, these are mid working up to treble frequencies. 1.5K, 2K, 3K, 4K, 5K, and 2, 3. There's your centre treble frequency. That's where all the real energy is on an electric guitar, vocal, there's a crack of a snare, etc. 1.5, 2, 3, 4 and 5K, and again, all you can do is turn that up, boost it. So let's hear it. 1.5. God, that is sensational. That is, let's try 2K. Now 2K, as we heard on the graphic, is that tiny plastic pot with a little bit of metallic edge. It's the transition frequency between small pots and metallic treble. That is lovely. It's it's just got no, there's nothing in it that's making you kind of go, oh no, ooh, a little bit, you know, even at full bore. And 2K can be a vicious frequency in terms of that small pot combined with the treble, you know, with the grit, with the metallic edge. This seems to be very quite harmonically rich, this. A presence frequency. This is around 2K here is also a presence frequency for the edges of consonants of words, the sound of the mouth moving, you know what I mean? Ah, that's lovely. 3K treble. Lovely. No harshness at all. 4K. We're getting quite treble now. And 5K. That is treble. Fantastic, absolutely beautiful. No harshness at all, and lovely and rich. So low frequency from the very sort of real bottom end of the mids, 200 Hz up to 1K. Choose the frequency boost. Higher mid to treble frequencies. Choose the frequency boost. And then finally the center one only cuts with the dip control. The more you turn that up, the more you're cutting. Again, I can't tell you the bandwidth, how wide that cut is. And this has a broad selection, right, covering the frequencies of both of the boost controls pretty much. 2K, 200 Hz, 300 Hz, 500, 700 and 1K. Those are the frequencies on the low boost. 1.5, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 7, which are all the frequencies on this upper boost, with the addition of 7K. Right? So you choose the frequency in dip. So let's choose 1K. Actually, let's go with more like 500. So I've just knocked, let's try 300. Okay, that's getting quite low. 200. Let's take that, I'm pushing full dip, so I'm knocking out that low mid 200 Hertz. It's really thinned the guitar out, right? Let's go up to 3. Not knock too much of that out, and that's just knocking out some of that deep cardboard box at 300 Hz to just take some of that honk off. But it's deep honk, right? Not too much. That's lovely. Okay, let's try knocking out some 3K. So I'm half knocking out the 3K, and let's give it lots of boost at 5K. Roll that back a bit. Let's go with 2. That's really mellowed it a lot. We're getting the glisten up the top here, and this is really subtle. It's beautiful. But we're just dipping down some of the 2K below that, just to take, which is a very treble area, whereas this is more high glisten. Which has just kind of softened the treble edge, but we've got some high glisten up there. What I could do is then add some of this 8K boost here at medium bandwidth, let's say. Give us the real top. Sounding a little artificial now. Stick with some of that 8K, but not so much of that. Oh, hang on. Not so much of that. absolutely sensational. Don't quote me on this, but I might say that this is now my favourite EQ. That is, oh, this section here is absolutely sumptuous. There's a word you don't hear very often in reviews of equipment. Oh, that is so smooth. Absolutely fan-bloody-tastic stuff. This is a gem. This is a this is a real gem. And let me tell you something. I trust the T-Rack stuff, right? This will give you the emulation of the EQP-1A as reliably as the T-Rack's one, and the T-Rack stuff is as good as anything else out there, right? But with the addition of this section, now don't quote me. Without even looking, I'm guessing it's what you get on the Tubetech. You know what? I'm going to check. Give me a sec. Yeah, it is. There it is. That's the Tubetech ME1B authorized emulation from Softube. Right, there's your low frequency selector with boost, there's your high frequency selector with boost, and there's your dip selector. Yeah, it is emulated, that Tubetech, absolutely. Right, so yeah, as I suspected. Now, how much is this thing if you were to buy this? The entire classic channel is $449. That gives you the Pultec emulation bit and that other section all together. Both. You can use them individually as plugins or together as a plugin, joined together, right? So that's $449. If you were to get that emulation from Tubetech, that would cost you $449 for that. That is beautiful. What an addition. I mean, for nothing. Logic itself costs 199 British pounds. That is fantastic. I've got to say, again, you know, don't quote me, but this could be my favourite EQ now. Certainly for things like acoustics and vocals, I would definitely start with this. I would definitely start with this for what the smoothness of the upper frequencies here and the lower frequencies here. Yeah, this is sensational, absolutely sensational. So anyway, that's the vintage tube EQ, and then the lastly, let's just look at the Neve. This is a Neve 1073. Let's hear it on this guitar. So I'm going to go, let's just do an 80 hertz, an 80 hertz low cut. Now I've got 110 hertz and I'm just cutting and boosting here. Let's try 220. Dipping the 700s now. It's a softer sound now, right? Because I'm dipping out the upper mid at 700 hertz, and we've got that 12k shelf giving us the glisten at the top, right? But we're boosting in the lower mids here and cutting out the deep stuff with the low cut. 1.6K that is. Getting a lot more boost than you will get on an original 1073 or an emulation. You're getting 20 dB of boost or cut. But you know what? Even if it's a lot of boost now, 11 dB. It's not harsh. It's at 1.6K. 3.2, it's quite treble, right? This is like the treble area that humans hear the most, the loudest, right? That's where all the treble energy of an electric guitar is. 4.8. Seven 7.2. It's a lovely EQ, that, beautiful. And again, it's a freebie. Fantastic stuff, absolutely brilliant. So yeah, there we go. That's the 3 vintage EQs. And as I said at the beginning, if we look in the EQ folder in our plugins selector here, there's a subfolder, Vintage EQ Collection. So who knows? Apple might bring us more emulations. Which ones would they choose if they were going to do that, though? That's the question. But this is sensational. This thing, absolutely mind-blowingly good. And so is this 1073 emulation. And the little graphic. Come on, little graphic, where are you? The little graphic lived all alone underneath the bridge. Nobody loved me, said the little graphic. Yeah, sound engineering tales for kids you could do, couldn't you, to get them into it when they're really young. The little graphic lived under a bridge. Nobody wanted to use him because he only had 10 bands. Yeah, fantastic stuff. I gotta say, this is a strange thing for Apple to do. I've got to say, to actually give you emulations of other people's bits of gear. But it is a strange thing for Apple to do, I must say. But my God, these are freebies, right? Included in the update. Don't underestimate the littlest graphic, because this will do some sensational stuff, particularly on electric guitars. Using a little 10-band octave graphic like this to carve out very, very strictly frequencies of guitars, which different layers of guitars, which can then be reblended together to get some sort of monster walls of guitar sound. There's other things you can do with the graphic, but like this. But yeah, a really useful thing to have. This is a beautiful emulation. This is a sensational emulation. Everything's good. And I hope that is useful. The Vintage EQ collection. Hopefully there's more to come.